Welcome to this episode of Listen to Your Coaches. I'm your coach, Mike Wilkins, here with Coach Will Morrill. Today, if you were expecting our top 5 list of UFC fighters to never win a belt, well, you got to wait one more week. All right, we had some current event related things take place this past weekend, and we want to talk about that instead. So I think this is a good time to kind of bring you behind the curtain a little bit on how we have been operating with the episodes leading up until this point. So we typically film on a day like today, which is a Monday. Today is Monday, December 11th. And an episode that would be recorded on a Monday would then be released not the following day, the Tuesday, but 8 days later, the following Tuesday. It gives Will time to go through and edit it, time for us to make little teaser clips, things of that nature, and pump them out to kind of get the episode hyped up leading into it. But we had some good events happen this weekend, so we're going to talk about those. So that top 5 list, that'll likely be released next week, assuming nothing crazy happens this weekend. All right? But, like that list, that's not time sensitive, really.
No, it's not.
No, so it'll come out, and that episode, I promise, is fire.
It's
all
a
right?
banger.
So today, some of the events that we want to talk about, I want to touch on this past weekend. I was in Las Vegas, where there were 2 prominent jiu-jitsu events that occurred. The IBJJF No Gi World Championships, which that's going to lean heavily towards people probably most of you know, athletes from Pittsburgh is what I really want to touch on, that competed at that event this weekend, and how everything went down, how we did. And the other event I want to touch on is the Fight Pass Invitational, which is a jiu-jitsu event put on by UFC Fight Pass that happened just last night, and it had some very prominent names in the world of jiu-jitsu on it. Will also is going to talk about the One Championships fights.
Yep.
Anyone in particular?
In fact, we are almost exclusively going to talk about the Luke the Chef and Joe Nadawat fight. I watched all of the ONE FC fights and all the UFC fights, and that's the one that I want to talk about.
All right, there we go. All right, so without further ado, let's dive into the hot topic here, and that's the Fight Pass Invitational 5. All right, so this just was last night. Again, this is Monday, so this happened Sunday night. You guys will be hearing this Tuesday. And it was a good event. It was a good event, but the scoring system for the event was absolutely atrocious. And it honestly took, so much, shine off of the event. All right. There were some really great matchups. If I could go down a few of the matchups that I was, very excited for. We had Andy Varela versus Achilles Hocha. That's Wagner's son. Oh. Chris Guzman and Aaron Wilson, UFC vets. Wagner Hocha himself on the card as well. So father son. Liz Clay versus Luisa Monteiro. Both IBJJF world champions. Victor Hugo and Big Dan Manisu. Big Dan, shout out to him, taking care of our boy Christian down in Austin. Nikki Ryan and Jonatas Gracie. Mason Fowler and Hasim Rida. And then the big matches, Yuri Simões versus Nicky Rodriguez in the co-main event. And the main event was Nicholas Miragali and Felipe Pena. Right there, I list that card off, and anybody who's, deep in jiu-jitsu is like, wow. There's some really great matches on that card.
I'm not even deep in jiu-jitsu, and even I'm like, oh, wow, there's some hitters on that.
Yes, some hitters on it. And the matches, honestly, if you could turn the scoreboard off and mute the commentary so that way you wouldn't be aware of how the scoring was going. The matches were great. The action in the matches were great. But honestly, the scoring just really left a bad taste in my mouth. I posted about it on Instagram, and I've only gotten feedback that mirrored my views in the group chat with the boys during the card. The BJJ bros. We watch jiu-jitsu cards, we're often in the group chat, this, all that, and stuff like that. It was pretty much unanimous that the scoring system for it was atrocious. So what they tried to do is they tried to do a modified ADCC scoring system, all right? We have an episode in which we touched on the ADCC scoring system, all right? It's a good scoring system. But what they did to modify it was they did like a long submission only period where positive points could not be awarded, but negative points could. Meaning that if you pulled guard, you receive a negative point.
So how did you get negative points? Was it just from pulling?
No,
stalling. Okay.
Stalling. Stalling would receive negative points, and pulling guard. I believe the modification of it was without contact. All right.
Okay. So if you have contact and like you jump guard, or maybe you like try to jump for a triangle or something.
Yeah,
would be
yeah,
okay?
definitely. If you use it for an attack, that it was fine.
Okay.
Now that was in like a regulation period. In most of the matches, that regulation period was an 8-minute period, and then that would be followed by a 4-minute overtime if there was no submission.
Okay.
Didn't matter if like you had like -2 and I had -1. There was a 4-minute overtime, and then that's where the positive points could be scored as well as negative points could continue to be added on to your total. And that would be half of what the original period was. So for the matches that had 8-minute, submission only duration, then it had a 4-minute point scoring point. And then the co-main and the main event were 10 minutes and 5. All right. And, it in theory, it had some good attributes to it. It looked like it would work out good. But in application, it turned out terrible.
See, that's interesting because I, like, leading up to it, I'd seen the posters and stuff, and really all I saw was, like, the main event, and I saw Nicky Rod was on it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. I know who these guys are. It's a big deal.
Well, and Nicky Rod's match on it was against Yuri Simões. Yuri Simões beat Nicky Rod at the most recent ADCCs in the open class semifinals.
Okay.
Yuri Simões will also be going against Gordon Ryan in the super fight at ADCC in the upcoming one. So the way that works, just for anybody who's not aware, the reigning super fight champion defends their championship at the next ADCC, and the challenger is whoever at that previous ADCC won the open class. That's how you earn your way into it, right?
Right.
That's how Gordon Ryan won it, earned his way into going against Galvao. And now Yuri Simões won it, earned his way into going against Gordon in this upcoming one, which is also why they wouldn't allow Gordon to do the absolute, because had he won it, it would be him versus him.
Right, yeah.
And kind of completely break the system.
Yeah.
They did allow him to do his weight class, though, which I believe he became the first super fight champ who was sitting out in the super fight to compete in
his weight class
in
as
a
well.
weight class as well.
I
right?
saw that last time. That was so sick.
Yeah, that was very sick. Definitely risky.
Yeah.
On ADCC's part, could you imagine an injury occurring or even him losing in his weight class?
Yeah, that would not be
with Gordon.
awesome.
It's kind of like
unlikely.
Yeah, but things happen, and then he loses in his weight class, and that tarnishes your.
I mean, he's gonna lose eventually.
Main
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
at some point in time, it's gonna happen.
But so that's all I had seen about it, saw who was involved.
Right.
And I like jiu-jitsu, but I don't follow it the way that you do. So I didn't, actually watch the event. But the next day, I guess today, I believe Tom DeBlas posted something about the kind of what you were getting at, is that the rule set was just awful. So
listen,
why don't you break it down for me a little bit?
All right. So I'm going to preface this with my interpretation of what Tom means. I did not see his post, did not read his post, but I'm assuming this is what he means, because I know that I would venture to guess Tom likes the ADCC rule set, as he is a big proponent of the ADCC. In fact, he puts on the East Coast trials for the North American trials for ADCC.
And he was a champion.
Yeah. So I'm sure I'm willing to bet large sums of money that he likes the ADCC rule set. The modification of the rule set and the application of it in this Fight Pass Invitational was an abomination of the rule set. So what we saw were negatives for stalling being thrown out at a relentless pace and an unjustified pace. And it completely took away from the event.
Give me an example.
Give you an example? All right, here goes an example. In a match that, if you watch this match, I promise you would not call a single stall call. Not a single one. It had, 7 stalling points awarded between the two athletes. In the main event, Nicholas Miragali and Felipe Pena, 8 negative points for stalling.
What? Like what
in
positions?
In a 15-minute match. Oh, for what positions? Not achieving your techniques. It's what it appeared to be. This match, okay, let me just run through a couple numbers here, all right? So, in the first match of the evening, Andy Verla super entertaining grappler, right? Like goes for like really great moves. He's kind of like a high flyer type guy. He has a match against Achilles Hocha, who is Wagner's son. I believe he might have just turned 18 because he was in juveniles last year. But it's a cool match. And in the regulation period, Varela has 2 or 3 takedowns, has near back takes, like nearly takes his back a handful of times. No, nearly takes his back and does take his back, and has him in a submission where he's on his back and has both his arms trapped behind his head.
All right? Clearly winning.
Yeah, guess what? They go to overtime. He's already losing -1-0. -1-0. They hit him with a stall for not achieving a takedown that he attempted. Yeah. Oh, listen, there was absolutely no stalling in that match. There was 0 stalling in that match. So he goes into overtime with a negative, so he's down 1. In the overtime, Achilles scores, and then at the end, like catches him out, and it makes the score look maybe a little bigger than the match actually was. But it was a great match, full of action. And right there, like the first thing, I'm like, man, I can't believe they gave Varela a negative here, right? But that was just the start of it. So 2 matches later, Christian Guzman and Aaron Wilson. Aaron Wilson is dogging Guzman. He is dogging him, right? Goes at the time. Luckily, he gets a submission. All right. At the time of the submission, he is dogging him. He is losing -2-0. -2-0. He is absolutely like there is no stalling. He is all over him, like passing the guard, all this stuff.
Is this open scoring? Like, do they see?
They know. Oh yeah, they know. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
okay, so you can see the moment the stall.
Yeah.
Are getting.
Oh yeah, these guys, they'll be actively like in the middle of a move, and they'll be like negative. It was ridiculous. Okay. So dude, I'm only into 2 matches so far. I'm only into 2 matches. All right. So we move forward. This match was full of action, and it was low-key one of the matches that I'm looking forward to the most. Nicky Ryan versus Jonatas Gracie. Okay? Like basically in the jiu-jitsu community, both household names.
Yes.
All right? The match was full of action, dude. It was full of action. It was a great match, exchanges here and there. Nicky Ryan ended up with -2 points. All right? The final score of this match is -2 to -1. So Jonatas Gracie wins by 1 point because he has -1. Nicky Ryan has -2. All right. Before I get into further scoring on that, explain that to your friends.
Yeah.
Explain that to the audience. You're on Fight Pass. You're trying to pull in some MMA fans over to the jiu-jitsu like community, get them into watching grappling events. That's why you're having some of these UFC veterans on, such as Hannah Goldie. She won her match by armbar. She looked great. You're having them on this card to like start to get this crossover. And hey, what's up? -2 to -1. Like, that is not what people want to see. That is not what people want to see. Now here goes what else, all right? In that match in which he won -2 to -1, he had 4 points. He had 4 positive points. He had 5 stalls on him. 5 stalls. So Nicky Ryan had 2 stalls and Jonatas Gracie had 5 stalls. But he got a takedown to side control, which is a 4-point maneuver. All right? So that's how he still won by -1. And here goes the thing, dude. He was in the driver's seat the entire match, and there should have been no stalling called on either of them.
I was going to say, I've seen, Nicky Ryan grapple before, and he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's stalling.
No, here goes the thing. Like, the match was so full of action, and if you look at Nicky's ADCC East Coast Trials run, in which he was a runner-up, not a single stall on him the entire tournament.
And in the podcast where we discussed all the rule sets, you talked about how ADCC,
they do stalling quick,
right.
And it was almost like they were trying to make a point of it, or they were trying to be like, look how anti-stalling we are, dude. Like, and it completely turned everyone off. You know, it was absolutely ridiculous.
Because jiu-jitsu is one of those sports where there will be moments where it is, I don't want to say stationary, but like,
yes, no, there will be moments of that. Right? Like,
yeah.
If you were in the middle of doing a passing sequence, right? That could take some time, right?
Yes.
If you're body lock passing, it takes a shuffle to gather a leg across your waistline. Then it takes a hip heist, right? You're like crawling forward. They're hitting neck. But here goes the thing. What's wild about it is they were doing negatives during like clear action. during clear action. All right. So in my notes here, what I have written down was in those first 3 matches that I'm referencing, the Varela versus Hocha match, the Aaron Wilson versus Christian Guzman match, and the Nicky Ryan versus Jonathan Gracie match, we saw, boom, 10 negative points awarded for stalling, in which I believe there should have been 0. I believe there should have been absolutely 0. So we're talking about those first 10. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. You know what I mean? So I'm talking about 10 of them, dude. 10. Not like, oh man, I didn't agree with that one stalling call. I didn't agree with 10 stalling calls. I didn't agree with 10 in a row. All right? We move forward. Big Dan versus Victor Hugo. Listen, these guys are heavyweights. First off, the mat wasn't big enough to contain them. They're on this stage, getting pushed off the stage left and right. That's neither here nor there, but it was these guys. They're heavyweights, and when you think of they're not your grandfather's heavyweights. These dudes are athletic, and they create action, and they have tremendous technique and good jiu-jitsu. And the match was super entertaining. It was super entertaining, and there was no stalling yet. Victor Hugo Dan had 3 negative points, and Victor Hugo had 4. No, I had that reverse. Victor Hugo had 3 negatives, and Dan had 4 negatives. Right? 7 stalls. So now we're up to 17 stalls, in which I agreed with absolutely 0. We're 0 for 17 in 4 matches. Dude, 17 stall calls in 4 matches with some of the best guys in the world. Who? This is ADCC rule set. You watch them in the ADCC rule set, I bet you that almost none of them have ever had a negative put on them. The entire, you know what I'm saying?
Where do you think this is coming from?
17. Here goes the thing. I believe, so in the ADCC rule set, the ref does not award the points, the judges do. And I did see some ADCC judges at the table, 2 very notable judges. And I don't know if they were instructed to do this as such. And I know that I've witnessed them, hit some quick stalls on some things in some matches that, when we were on deck for Christian versus AJ, there was a match where I was like, man, I can't believe they're hitting this dude with stalling. He's actively trying to pass, and I'm like, but, here or there. So, I was, kind of, thrown by that. But I don't know if they were trying to make a point of it, but we're just talking about 17 stalls in a row that were completely unwarranted. And I believe that those stalls, out of those 17, maybe 1 is happening at an ADCC event. Out of 17.
Dude, I gotta...
4 matches. We're only through 4 matches, dude. We're only through 4 matches. All right, Victor Hugo did rally late in overtime. He got a sweep to Mountain and managed to secure an Americana on Big Dan to win by submission. So that was very exciting. And then let's move on to the two main matches, right? Nicky Rod and Yuri Simões. Nicky Rod got a -1, but it was for a guard pull, all right? In which I believe there was some confusion because Nicky Rod during this, when he got awarded the -1, he's like, dude, I had contact. So there was some confusion there that I'm not fully aware of. And Yuri Simões had, 2 negatives, in which 1 may be warranted. I would say 1 was warranted. There was 1 when he was in bottom mount, kind of not doing anything. But they're warning Nicky while he's in top mount, actively in a head and arm triangle. Actively pursuing a head and arm triangle. He's in that, kind of that in-between zone on, do I go head and arm triangle or do I go to the back? Do I go head and arm triangle like that? Because, Yuri's coming up on his side. So it's which one do I go for? The dilemma.
Yeah, exactly. That taking what's presented to you.
Yeah, and they're threatening to call him for stalling there, and I'm like, dude, this is so ridiculous.
No, wait a minute. So his hands are locked.
Yeah. His hands are locked. He's in in position to do one of the other, depending on if Yuri puts his shoulders to the mat. He's likely going to go head and arm triangle. If Yuri elects to continue to roll up to his side, then he's going to slide his back knee up behind the back and chair sit towards the back. Would be my assumption.
See, that's funny because you gave me 2 options there, and neither one of those seems like stalling to me.
No, they're not. Neither was stalling, right? So now here goes what we're at. We're at 20. No, because Nicky Rod's was a guard sit. We're at 19, and now I agree with 1. 1 out of 19. In the main event, Nicholas Marigali versus Felipe Pena, right? Super high level match, right? These are this is a very exciting match. Nicholas Marigali got hit with a negative. Dude was on offense the entire match. Absolutely, just mind blowing. never like took a defensive step, I would say.
Now he's the gi guy, right? Who transferred?
Yes, he just
Okay.
recently transitioned over, and
Hasn't it only been like a year?
so he did 2 Who's Number One matches to get ready for ADCC 2022, in which he received an invite to. So his first match at ADCC was only his 3rd no-gi match of his life. He ended up taking 3rd in his weight class, minus 99 kilo, and 2nd in the open weight against Yuri Simoes, or else it would be Marigali versus Gordon, teammates.
Dude, hold on. Has there ever? This is a little off topic, but has there ever been someone who was a real high level gi guy who then went to no gi and got to the top?
Maybe Pat, like maybe before like my
Right. This
my knowledge of
generation.
history, yeah, but not in this generation, and mainly because like you don't see too many guys in this generation who are so strictly gi,
Right.
with no gi being kind of like the premier style
Exactly.
when it comes to like
High level.
prize,
Yeah,
prize
competition.
jiu-jitsu.
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah.
prize fighting, prize jiu-jitsu. No gi is by far the premier style,
Yeah.
right? So you don't see as many that dedicated to just gi. We recently saw Tainan Dalpra, who's a gi world champion, just make his no gi debut at the most recent Who's Number One, and he looked phenomenal. But these guys, like like they're the cream
Yeah,
of the crop.
they're training both anyways. I
Well,
assume.
actually, I mean, I don't think so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think so.
You don't
Yeah.
think they bounce around a little bit?
No, I don't. Like
Interesting. I guess it's so
Marigali,
specialized that would actually make sense.
I believe, made a mention to that point.
Interesting. That makes it way more impressive, though.
Yeah, it does make it way more impressive. But let's get back to this.
Yeah, back to it.
All right,
Sorry.
so Nicholas Marigali gets a -point. Felipe Pena gets -7. -7, dude. This is a 15-minute match. Now, right? We were at 19, which I agreed with 1. Okay, so now we're at 27. Now I agree with 4.
Okay.
Felipe Pena was stalling. He was stalling, but not 7 stalls.
Yeah.
Right? Like 4. Oh, and also, here goes the other thing. To get your first stall, you got to add 2. You got to add 2. You get 2 warnings before you get your first stall.
Oh, so
Yeah.
every single one of these.
Yeah. So every single person, we add 2 more. So what did I say? We were up to 27. 27. Well, plus 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So 27 plus 18. I can't even do that math.
That's a lot of stalls right
Dude,
there.
that's a lot of stalls. You want to know what that is, though, too? That's a lot of stalls in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 matches. You know what I'm saying?
That's absurd.
45 stall calls in 6 matches, right? That's ridiculous. And we agreed, out of the 45, like I said, I agreed with like 4 or 5 of them. And I think that was like, the majority. Even if you agreed with more, you didn't agree with all. No one agreed with all.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody, agreed with all of those stall calls. And on top of that, like, it became like that was the game. Like, how can you put your opponent into a position that they're going to get called for stalling? Not how can I score, right? And it was like there were several times where the person who was like winning,
Right.
who, like, if you were watching it without negatives, right? You were watching it didn't include these ridiculous stall calls. You'd be like, this dude is kicking that dude's ass,
Yeah.
right? But yet they're losing. That was like the main way to be losing, was to do better. Was the main way to like get negatives. It was absolutely crazy.
Dude, this just feels like it sets jiu-jitsu back as a...
It did. Like, I was so close to being like, dude, I really want to watch, especially the Nicky Rod, Yuri Simoes match and the Marigali Pena match. And I was like, dude, should I turn this off to boycott? Like,
Yeah.
I was like, I was like thinking about it. I was like, I should turn this off to boycott, right? Like, I was like, dang, like, I really hated it. And it affected, the matches. I mean, like, dude, like, you know what we want? We want to see, like, all right, if you're not going to do sub only, which I do like points, we want to see points go on the board, right?
Yes.
First off, I don't want to do math on the scoreboard, right? So Jonatas Gracie, who won -1 to -2, had 4 positive points and 5 negative points. So you got to do the math.
Yeah.
You're up there doing the math. If they're going to award stalling, why not do it like wrestling and award the opponent a point? Like, why are we doing negative points to where we have to do this math? And to where you have final scores of -2 to -1. At one point in time, had Victor Hugo and Big Dan not ended in a submission, it was -4 to -3. Marigali and Penna, at one point, it was -1 to -7. Then Marigali got the back and got the submission. He didn't even get the submission. Penna quit.
Interesting.
Yeah, he quit. He
just wasn't about it.
He kind of quit trying, got body triangle with an arm trapped. Marigali started to put an arm under the neck, and he just was like, I'm done. Didn't even put it on. But, you know what I mean? Like, you're having matches that are about to end -7 to -1, -1 to -2. It did end that way. -3 to -4. Like,
that's absurd.
Dude, it's ridiculous. It's bad for the sport. That's not like what you're trying to do. Is you're trying to bring in more fans to the sport.
Right.
And if it's not going to be sub only, if you want, like, which I like it not being sub only. I like points being awarded, right? Like, there's excitement in getting a takedown.
Right.
There's excitement in getting a guard pass. Obviously, there's excitement in a submission, right? It's just like in wrestling. Like, when we get a pin, it's like boom. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a match ender. Right, like that's the big one. There goes your submission. But there's excitement in point scoring positions, right? Getting to those positions and things like that, and achieving those takedowns and stuff. Like, we understand what takedowns are.
And that's
you
what
see
I was
a big
say.
slam in the UFC, it's exciting.
Yeah,
it's exciting. We get it, right? Someone gets to mount in the UFC, you're like, oh, because you can feel a finish is like
closer.
Yeah.
So that's what I was gonna say is one of the reasons why I don't think, and this is a whole, I'm gonna have to pop that back up. But one of the reasons why I feel like, fighting, and this is kind of a tangent, but I don't feel like fighting is a true sport because it's so subjective. And that's again, a whole nother thing. But jiu-jitsu could be pretty objective with their points. You know what I mean? It's like, you got mount. This is X amount of points.
Yeah,
everyone sees that.
It can be fairly objective. And like, dude, like if you look at like what's the most popular sport in America? Right now the United States drives. We're in the driver's seat of like what like rule changes and like popularity of things because we are the main market. Right? So what's the most popular sport in America?
I think football.
The United States. Football, right? And what has all of football's rule changes been about?
Dude, I'm not even into sport and I know this. Like, it's about getting more points on the board.
More points on the board. They make it more difficult on the defense, easier for the offense, because we like to see the action, and that's more points on the board, right? That's what we need to be doing with jiu-jitsu. That's what we're doing we just did it with wrestling. This year, we talked about in previous episode about the rule changes in wrestling. Dude, we're 2 months into the wrestling season, like a month and a half into the college wrestling season. Guess what, dude? It's awesome, right? This rule changes, it's exciting. We love it, right? More points are going up on the board, which is causing more offensive scenarios. You know, jiu-jitsu needs to take a page from that book.
And see, it's really unfortunate too, because like, if you sat down here and you were like, dude, these were great matches, the whole event was great, and you had good things to say.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, if you shut the scoreboard off and mute the commentary so that way you can't hear them talking about the relentless negatives. And they wouldn't even talk. There were moments where Gordon was like, it's weird that he's got the negative when he's had all the attacks and like stuff like that. But like, it was like they were like trying not to be like, dude, what is happening?
Right, yeah, they're trying to like hold it together and say professional or whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, it was bad, and it seems to be getting the same negative reviews across the board. And I don't like it. Hopefully, Mo Jassam, who's kind of like the Dana White of ADCC, he like made. I saw a post he made. It was a short post. He was like, "If you're gonna use ADCC rules, use them, or like no more modified. If you're gonna call them modified, call them something else. Don't use our name in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't want to be associated with mediocrity.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was bad. And like I said, the matches were still good but like, man, these negatives coming in, they really ruined it.
Dude, and that's what I was gonna say is like, if you sat down and you told me like, dude, it was awesome, the event was run really well, I'd be like, hey, maybe I want to watch that next one. But me, someone who has a limited amount of time to watch combat sports, and I'm a fan of a lot of different combat sports, that right there, I'm like, oh, well, I'm probably not gonna watch the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. If I were to bring you in, if I was like, okay, first off, you like jiu-jitsu enough because you're so closely related to it. But if I were to bring, like, I have wrestling friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I'm trying to like be like, oh, you guys should get into jiu-jitsu, it's fun, da da da. Hey, let's watch this event, dude. And I put that event on for them to watch, I would be embarrassed.
That's such a
It is
bummer.
not what I want to see, you know, not at all. It was a bad look. And like I said though, like it's wild though. The matches were great.
Yeah.
It's
Just the scoring ruined it.
scoring ruined, absolutely ruined it, and it just like gave you the like it's like it would make anybody who was casual trying to become a little more educated, or anybody who was giving jujitsu or submission grappling a chance.
Right.
It would make it even more confusing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, wait, you mean that guy who's kicking the shit out of that guy's
Yeah.
losing?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't get it. Oh, -3 to -2. Oh, -4 to -3. -1 to -7. What's that mean? Oh, wait, he's got -5, but he also has 4, so he's got a total of -1. Like, it was ridiculous. I hated every second of it, and I hope. And I was really excited that they were using it because this was the first time that they didn't use EBI rules, which is sub only with
Right. The overtimes.
The overtimes. I was really excited that they were implementing a points system because I do really enjoy like rewarding like a takedown, rewarding a guard pass, rewarding achieving a dominant position, but it surely backfired, and there's no way they're going to do that again.
Dude, I'm sorry to hear that because the fights I watched, totally different experience.
Bring us back up, brother. Bring us back up.
All right, so I did watch the UFC card. Well, first of all, actually, I feel like I should say this too because I feel like some people see us as coaches and they think that like when we're watching, it's like full analysis and everything. Full disclosure, I watched the UFC card and the ONE FC card strictly as a fan. Okay, so
Dude, sometimes it's really good to do that.
it is. It keeps the
I'm not
love
trying
alive.
to learn. Like, not like I do watch fights, jiu-jitsu matches, and things like that, trying to learn, trying to like further my education. You know,
Or
whether
even
it
just
be
fully
with
understand it. You know?
yeah, whether it be with even technique or just like strategy,
Yeah.
or like like for like the new metas and like things like that. But like sometimes, man, I just want to shut it off and enjoy it.
Exactly.
Dude, that's one thing I get to do with wrestling. Like all my
Yeah.
wrestling watching, like I mean, like if something cool happens, I'll like
Right. Yeah.
I'll be like when this match is over, like and I go home, I'm pulling up the video and I'm gonna break that down.
Right.
But like I get to watch it as a fan.
Exactly. And I kind of choose when I want to do that. You know, sometimes I analyze, sometimes I. But anyways, long way of saying, I was just chilling, enjoying watching as a fan. So the UFC fights pretty cool. Khalil Roundtree, you know, I've been pretty big on him for a while. I actually trained at the same gym as him in Bangkok. Different times, but he was at Petchindy. And that's where we were at earlier this year. He looked phenomenal, but and I've been talking about him for quite some time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I saw him. He put Anthony Smith on skates.
dude, it was
and then
crazy.
like I thought like his like pose
Yeah.
was cool. Like got up on his tippy toes with his hand
Yeah.
up. Like you just better stop this.
And you know it's crazy? I don't think that was I don't think that was like an intentional choice of showmanship. I think that's genuinely him. I think he was like, all right, I could finish this, but I'm choosing not to.
I didn't think it was showmanship either. I read it as in like, here's your like here I'm giving you some buffer. It's like the way if I were to compare it to jiu-jitsu, it's like if I like have like an arm lock on you and like I apply it and I just
Yeah.
kind of like give you the look like
Yeah, like I got this.
like no pop.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like yeah.
Give him that second.
Yeah, like I'm giving you this opportunity.
Which I think is cool, you know what I mean? And like I look at
I think that's the sportsman.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
it, yeah.
And I look at and I like both of them. You know what I mean? Like I like the savages in the sport as well. But like that's one thing that I really like about like Khalil Roundtree is he seems like a gentleman. You know what I mean? And like when you hear him talk, like he just sounds like not the way you'd expect a fighter to be, and I like that. You know what I mean? But anyways, not here to talk about the UFC. I want to talk about the ONE FC fights.
Okay.
Dude. So first of all, it was an entirely Muay Thai card. They don't always do that. They usually mix it.
Did they go big gloves or little gloves?
They go little gloves, right?
Were they ring or cage?
It was in a ring. I believe it was in Lumpini. And I think they only do ring in Lumpini. So actually, let's just start with that. So the way that ONE FC does Muay Thai is they go 4-ounce gloves, like the way you'd see MMA fighters, you know, what they fight in. They do 3 rounds instead of 5. And that's what is known
Are
as
the rounds threes or fives?
threes.
They are threes, so 3 threes.
Exactly.
As opposed to 5 threes.
And that's referred to as entertainment Muay Thai, as opposed to stadium Muay Thai, which is what you see generally in Lumpini or Rajamnaran, or that's what.
Why is there a difference? What are some of the larger differences of that?
So the big differences are, like we said, the gloves. They're using boxing gloves in stadium Muay Thai. They're using little gloves, and then traditionally Muay Thai is 5 3-minute rounds versus this is 3 3-minute rounds.
I understand. What's the difference?
So what that leads to is in traditional Muay Thai, the first round is oftentimes, and sometimes the second round, just feel out. So it's like they're standing in front of each other, touch a jab, inside low kick, touch a jab, inside low kick back, right? And they're just kind of hanging out. Then usually by the third round, it's ramped up. Fourth round, they're usually getting after it. You tend to see more clinching in those later rounds. And then sometimes in the fifth round, they won't engage. Depending on what the betting is going on, depending on what their corners tell them, they'll just come out, move around a little bit, stand in front of each other, move around a little bit, and there's just no engagement, right? And
that sounds terrible.
It is terrible. And when we, I took a group from the gym to Bangkok in whenever that was, March or whatever. We went to Rajamnaran because I'm like, hey, we're here. Let's check out the best Muay Thai there is. Like, it's literally why we're here. And I knew this, so like I expected it. But the first fight where that happened, like all the guys from our gym were looking at me like, why aren't they fighting? And I was like, oh, that's right. Like, this is what they do. And I don't know if it's strictly like a betting thing. Like, they're like, oh, our guy's up, let's just like let it rock. Or if they, it's a scoring
Why
thing.
isn't the guy who's down trying to like come after it?
I think it's because both camps believe their guy is up and they don't want them to take damage. To be honest, I don't know, dude. There's a lot about Muay Thai that is like very strange and doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Some of the scoring stuff, like it's a very, odd sport. But I think looking at it with American eyes is very difficult as well, because we view damage and like punches to the head as being like, high scoring, and it's just not the case over there. It's like knees to the body and round kicks and like looking pretty. So already it's, kind of different. So what I like about the entertainment Muay Thai, and also I'm not like a one or the other. I think they should both exist. But in the same way that Jiu-Jitsu is trying to like alter the rules in ways that make it user-friendly and can pull people in, that's what I think entertainment Muay Thai does, right? We have smaller gloves. We're going to get more finishes, right?
Yeah.
Also, with smaller gloves, you can't just shell.
Yeah.
Right? And you see that a lot in Muay Thai. Guys shell up and they wait for the storm to be over. In little gloves, the storm doesn't have to be over, right? Those gloves sneak through. And that's also why I think we're seeing some of the guys who were like stadium champs not always doing as well in little gloves because they can't shell. And I think it just makes it more boring to have big gloves and shell, right? It's the equivalent of like in jiu-jitsu, right? You're on bottom. You have a closed guard. In order to do something, you have to open that guard up, right? Yeah. Same thing here. Like if I just shell, I'm posted up. It's a static position. I'm waiting for my turn to then fire back. Whereas if it's an active guard, that leads to a lot more of my counters, right? It's not an exact equivalent, but like, I don't know. I think it's better to have smaller gloves. Also, it makes the clinch more interesting in my opinion because you can get better grips. And having 3 rounds, now there's no time to take a round off. You can't be like, oh, I won this round, I'm just going to chill. No. It is action the whole time. And they give out, relatively large bonuses as well, which incentivizes them to look for finishes. So I think entertainment Muay Thai is a great thing overall. I don't think it should replace traditional Muay Thai, but I do think that it makes for a great time. And I've had friends who are not into, fighting the way that like we are. And I'm like, hey, check this out. And they love it. They're like, this is insane. I mean, we just had, granted, it was a 5-rounder. Was it a 5-round? No, it was a 3-rounder. Rodtang and Superlek, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone was talking all about how
great.
great.
It was a great fight.
Phenomenal fight, right? And entertainment Muay Thai. You know what I mean? 3 rounds. I think those guys would have fought at a high pace for 5. But you get what I'm saying. Like, overall, that does force the issue. So that I thought was really cool. And then the fight I specifically want to talk about, Smoking Joe Nottawat and Luke the Chef. I think it's Lacey. That's what they were saying. I used to be saying Lacey. I'm not entirely sure. But regardless.
Luke, he's American?
He's American. He's the best American, or at least the top-ranked American fighter. I would argue he's probably one of the best American strikers that we have.
Where's he from?
He's from, I believe, Iowa, right? So out in the Midwest, right? I think he used to be a construction worker or something.
Dude, that's awesome.
Exactly. He's the kind of guy that you want to be a fan of, And he's really known for being like real slick on the outside and using all kinds of elaborate feint games and stuff. And I'm sure in his, I think he had like 50 amateur fights or something like this. This only is like fifth pro fight too. That's
Holy
nuts.
smokes.
Yeah, dude, crazy.
Where do you get 50 amateur fights at?
In the States? He's got to be traveling a lot. But
yeah, and who's like taking these fights?
I don't know. But
right, we're already having trouble getting people fights after they have a 5-0 record. We're
yeah,
like, oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, this dude's a monster. And I'm sure he has had some like, hard fights in that 50 amateur fight career, but at least what I see, on, Instagram and, YouTube and everything is him slick on the outside using, again, cool feint games, baiting his opponent into things like real pretty Muay Thai. Dude, this fight, dog fight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man. He steps in. He's digging elbows. Joe Nottawa's hitting crazy volume from the outside. First round, and again, this is me not remembering perfectly. I was just trying to enjoy it, right? But from what I remember, first round, real close. That might have been the round he, at the very end, knocked down Smokin' Joe with a teep, like right at the end. But like already crazy, insane pace. And instead of being on the outside and using his tricky, switch feints and stuff, he's stepping in and just smashing elbows and eating elbows too. Okay. And doesn't seem to be phased. Like Luke the Chef is super tough, right?
Yeah.
Like I already knew he was technical, and now I see this and I'm like, yo, this dude's a dog too? Like this is awesome. Second round, Nottawa's crushing him with volume, right? I think that round was pretty clearly Smokin' Joe. I do think
they won the first.
First is close. It's real close, right? I mean, and again, maybe if I watch it back, I'm like, it's not as close. But in my mind, while watching, I'm like, oh, it's, relatively close. Also,
right.
Fair disclosure, I'm a big fan of Luke the Chef, so like, maybe I was a little biased watching this, right? Second round, Smokin' Joe. Third round starts the same. Smokin' Joe coming out big volume with his punches from the outside. Luke's just kind of shelling, eating them, and then firing back, stepping in with elbows, and again, eating them back too. And he's wearing it. Like he's a little bloody. Dude, halfway through the round, he cracks him with, I think it was a right hand, it might have been an elbow. Joe's stunned. He's a little wobbly, right? Luke fires down on him, and I think the last like 10 seconds, he hurt him really bad, and like Smokin' Joe's about to go down. He's going in and just trying to, finish strong there. And, I personally would definitely give him that last round just for damage, right? And, clearly being the one closer to, winning the fight. Ended up being a decision for Joe Nottawa, which, not terrible. It was a close fight.
Man, I was, after your recount of it, I was really hoping for Luke.
Dude, me too, but it's one of those fights.
USA.
Well, it's one of those fights where, like, even though he lost, stock through the roof.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, after this, I'll show you some highlights, and you're going to be like, dude, I'm a fan of that guy. You know what I mean? And also just, like, what a cool story. You know what I mean? Like, we see Muay Thai, and you see all the big stars, and they're all Thais, right? And which is great. It's, that's their national sport. But then we see this dude, and we're like, yo, this skinny dude from Iowa, he's up there too, and he's a dog. Like, man, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So, man, exact opposite, experience of what you had with the Fight Pass grappling matches.
Yeah,
man, it was a phenomenal night of fights. Truly enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the next one card.
That's awesome. Maybe we'll have to do a little LTYC for it.
Yeah, we might have to. Sneak peek, we might have to do some live fight pods.
That'd be kind of fun. So something to look forward to there.
Yeah. So
hopefully
we'll do that. Why don't you take us home?
All right. So I'm going to wrap us up with a little bit of the IBJJF No Gi Worlds from Pittsburgh's perspective. All right. So just kind of a rundown of how the Pittsburgh athletes did at this past World Championships. While we were out there, we had several of the Stout PGH competitors competing, as well as React BJJ competitors, and the Mat Factory was there as well, representing very well. I was fortunate enough to be able to coach pretty much everybody, So for the Mat Factory, Dempsey and Isaac had to stay back. Chris Dempsey is getting ready to compete in the Combat Jiu-Jitsu World Championships.
Ooh.
Friday the 22nd.
Oh, he is made for that.
Oh, yeah. Middleweights. I believe it's Friday the 22nd down in Arizona. I believe it's on UFC Fight Pass.
Good luck,
Not
Chris.
100% sure on any of that, but I'm pretty confident. I'm just running that off the top of my head. I got a good memory, so I believe in myself. So they weren't able to make it, which tasked me with some extra coaching responsibilities, which I am honored to do. Wasn't alone. American top team black belt Mauricio Gomez was there. He's one of my favorite grapplers. Many of you may know him from 2022 ADCC West Coast trials. He was placed inside of a buggy choke, and he slammed that man unconscious.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, you do, bro. Yeah, dude. Super great guy. I think he's like 2-0 pro MMA fighter now. Super high level black belt. One of the sweetest dudes I know. Every time I see him, we always have a great time, and I always remind him he's my favorite grappler. All right, yeah. So let's run down some of the competitors at the World Championship. So we had Brian Marska, Matt Factory OG, competing in the brown belt division. In the Masters division, had a tough match. Ended up losing it 2-0. I believe that was a quarterfinals match. Which leads me to something I want to talk about the World Championships. All right, so. First off, the first thing that you got to know about an IBJJF tournament is that there is no consolation bracket, right? It's once you lose, you're done.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're done. So with that being said, exactly half the people there lose their first match.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's, very common to lose your first match. 1 out of 2 people are doing it, And at the World Championships, right, like, it has a lot of extra prestige around it. So it's drawing in a larger competitor pool and people who typically take the sport more serious. So we're seeing it at the competition in these divisions at the highest level that they're going to be. Okay. So, every match at these World Championships, there's no slouches there.
Right.
Okay. So everybody who's competed at them, hats off to you. Tremendous amount of respect. And win or lose, getting out there, putting it on the line, that's a big deal. Brian ended up losing his match, tightly contested match, 2-0. Very close match in the last seconds. Goes for a throw, ends up not working out. One thing to be proud of about that is it was his offensive maneuver, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't go down not swinging,
right?
You know what I mean? So shout out to Brian. John Davis as well in the brown belt division. Ended up losing his match 2-0. He got taken down real quick, kind of like right off the whistle. And his opponent was able to hold a strong position. Didn't receive any penalties for non-action, as John was all action the entire time, fighting to the bitter end to try to get a sweep to, tie the match up. Didn't end up working out. John, I believe, is a returning world finalist too. So, has achieved success in this division in the past. But again, losing in the quarterfinals this year. So just not his year this year. We also had Jake Lowry. Jake Lowry is a beast, dude. So Jake won his first match by submission, as was expected. Jake was the 1 seed in his division in the brown belt category. And his second match, which I believe was a quarterfinal match as well, he had a match against UFC fighter Phil Hawes. Right?
Oh.
Yeah, right. And I'm sitting there, I'm assisting with coaching Jake. Me and Mauricio were like, coaching Jake. And Phil's coach is like right next to us, right? Because like we're at these barriers. I get to go inside a little special area, but everybody else is behind these barriers and stuff. And Phil's coach is like, this should be a finals. Like before the match, I hear him like, this should be a finals. And like during the match, he's like, this should be a finals. And then after the match, he's like, Coach, that should have been a final. And I'm like, dude, I know. So in that match, it ended up 0-0. No advantages either way. No penalties either way. Zeros across the board. The referee was missing advantages. But it all worked out as far as that was concerned because in my opinion, the advantages that were earned, and like advantages, although they can be slightly judgmental, there are some positions which are, by rule, that's an advantage. You have achieved an advantage, right? And they each had 2. So it ended up, them being 0-0, it ended up playing out because they each had 2. Ended up going to a judge's decision in which the judge gave it to Phil Hawes, which I disagree with, all right? And I do not believe I'm playing any hometown hometown favorites with this. 95% of the offense was Jake's. Jake was closer to scoring the actual points, right? With 2 near takedowns and things like that. So I really felt that Jake won the match, but the ref did not. Now that does not take away from the fact that I thought it was an incredibly close match.
Right.
Just because I think like you know what I mean, like if you're scoring something like, you know what I mean, like 3-2, right? You're like, damn, that was 1 point, that was close, right? But it's still clear, like 3-2. You know, so it was still very evident to me. That doesn't take away from the fact that it was a razor thin margin. I just don't really see how you could see it the other way.
Right.
So unfortunately there, Phil then obviously went on to win the bracket, leaving Jake a match out of medaling, which was an unfortunate bracketing situation as they were clearly the 2 best in the bracket. Lucas Jones, all right, blue belt from the Mat Factory. Dude, this kid's awesome. First off, shout out to Lucas. He's my blackjack partner.
Right on.
We were on the tables on Friday night. We went hard on the tables. I'll just leave it at that. All right, that's my buddy Lucas. He won his first 2 matches, dropped his 3rd match. I missed all of his matches because he happened to be competing during a time where a lot of the stout athletes were competing. So just on different mats, unable to see. But you know, he had 2 really good wins. And the match that he lost, you know, just ran into a buzzsaw, and his own words was just, you know, that guy's just better than me, you know, which there's something like there's something so admirable about like being like, yeah, just like I'm not better than that guy yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and the kid, he just turned 21 the Wednesday prior. So super young kid, really bright future, really looking forward to seeing him progress. All right. Then we have our Lucas Siebert. Great performance, great tournament. He went 3-1, winning his first 3 matches. Shoot, I'm not remembering. I know he won his first one by submission.
Yeah, I think it was a high elbow.
Yeah, could have been. I can't remember. Dude, there was a lot of matches.
Yeah.
A lot of
he's only
matches.
been doing jiu-jitsu for what, like a year and a half or something?
Yeah, like a year and a half. But he's got like a really good wrestling pedigree. He's athletic and he learns well. And he ended up losing in the round of 6. He was in a deep bracket. So, for example, he was his first match in the round of 128. So that means he has to win the round of 128, and then that gets narrowed down to the round of 64, 32, 16, quarters, semis, finals. He would need to go 7-0 to win this bracket. Very deep bracket. So he won his first 3 matches convincingly, was not challenged, really. I'm not saying that these people weren't good.
Right, yeah. He was just better.
He was better, outclassed them. And honestly, the match that he lost, I felt like he was better than that young man as well. Although, like, you know, like jiu-jitsu is one of those sports. Not always the better grappler wins. You know, one mistake can end it all. In which he caught himself in an armbar, in which I feel like he was a little bit not respecting. You know, like the technique got a little like I always get out, I'll get out, right? Like, you know what I mean? And even if you're getting out 99% of the dude, there's that one.
Yep.
And that one will get you. He took some good damage to his elbow, big hyperextension, a lot of pops, cracks, and tears. You know, but you know that's how the cookie crumbles. But great tournament for him nonetheless. Claire Butterfield, brown belt. Oh, dude, beast. Monster. I am of the opinion that Claire is the best person I train with. I am sure of it, that she is better than me at jiu-jitsu, but she is a 125-pound woman, so I win most of those matches. Yeah, Claire's incredibly technical. So Claire, she was started in the round of 16. Her first opponent received an injury this week, so was not able to compete. So she received a bye into the quarterfinals. Now here goes where I want to talk about the belt levels and how the game changes. So first off, Claire's competing in the adult division, which is like, you know, the primary division, right? She recently got her brown belt this July after only spending less than a year and a half at purple belt, right? So she ran through purple belt quick and deserved it. So Claire, one thing you got to know is like, so you'll see these blue belt brackets such as Lucas's, 128, round of 128. There was like 97 competitors, round of 128 competitors in it, whereas Claire's bracket, less than 16 competitors. Now, here goes what you got to understand. At each belt level, there's going to be less competitors.
Right.
right? Like, because, like,
Going up the belts.
yeah, going up the belts, right? Blue belts, it's a big pull, right? Then, not everybody makes it the purple belt. So, and then also, after you make it the purple belt, you might be like, dude, I'm not competing at the world championships at purple belt, right? So now that pool gets smaller. Then you go to brown belt, it gets smaller again. Then you go to black belt, actually gets bigger. Gets bigger at black belt. And here goes one thing what people might not be considering, all right? It's because the colored belts here, they are limited, right? I would say your average brown belt competitor probably spends 2 seasons at brown belt, like average, right? Some of them 1, some of them 3. But I would say on average 2 seasons at brown belt. Whereas your average black belt competitor, well, you got your black belt. Brother, you're your black belt for the rest of your life, dude. So there's people there who are making their black belt debut. There's people there who are in their 12th black belt world championships, so it gets a little deeper there.
Exactly.
Because, like, it's just like a 2-year window typically for brown belt. In her quarterfinal match, she faced somebody that we're slightly familiar with. We've seen before. Wendy Edmundson. She fought Carly Jo in 247 Fighting Championships.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she beat Carly Jo by rear naked choke in an incredibly competitive fight. Had a really flashy back take where she kind of like hopped off the cage onto the back. Really good competitor. And Claire, in my opinion, had better jiu-jitsu, but Wendy was just like a more prepared competitor that day. The way the match went out, comes out, Claire pulls her guard. Claire, who has an incredible guard, including guard retention, maybe lacked a little bit of belief in it in the early go, as Wendy is attempting very good passing. Claire, bailed on her retention and resigned to Turtle, right? In Turtle, wasn't very active on the escape, and Wendy was able to achieve back control. You know what it kind of reminded me of? Like somebody who, like an MMA fighter who needs punched to wake up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and then they get going. So Claire got going, right? So she escapes back control. She rallies. She has a nice triangle attempt that I thought for sure was going to finish. She got 3 sweeps. Ended up giving up 1 sweep due to having to attack a leg lock. Gave up a sweep there. So ended up losing 6-6, but advantages 2 to Wendy, 1 to Claire. But without that, like, first, like, kind of like freeze up, like, at the beginning of the match, because that's a 4-point maneuver.
Yeah,
that's 4 points there. The match looks different, so I would hope that Claire is proud of her performance moving forward, knowing that one match, she was technically 1 advantage away from tying, 2 advantages away from being a world medalist at the adult brown belt division, which is nothing to scoff at, right? And then we had our lone black belt competitor, Sage, Dan Stupinski, one of my under the wing guys. He competed in his black belt debut under the IBJJF. Masters 1, lightweight. Came out against the 6th seed, a guy who had a lot of experience, had a lot of highly... So the way the seeds work, it's based on your past accomplishments and how many points are acquired due to, like, the medals that you have achieved in the IBJJF in the division or the division surrounding. The guy had a lot. Sage, very competitive match. Was down on points. I felt like he was maybe making some poor strategical decisions in the sake of feeling like he needed to hit a home run, but had some really good exchanges. A lot of the stuff that he's been working on recently was working. Sage is someone who I fully believe could do so much better with a healthy dose of confidence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would be my biggest critique over him for as long as I known him, is just believe in yourself a little more, so that was his tournament. All right. And now that moves us into the Pittsburgh World Medalists. All right, we're going to start in the blue belt division. Blue belt women's adult light featherweight division, where Selena Jovith placed bronze after winning her quarterfinal match over a true 4 seed by a score of 17-2. So that's a pretty dominant win there. And then she dropped her semifinal match to the 1 seed, who was one of those, like, clear 1 seeds, like 270 seeding points. Like, so great tournament to Selena there, medaling at the World Championships. It's a long road to that. The Mat Factory's Mike Ross came in the 1 seed at the super heavyweight division, coming off a a strong Pan Am's performance. Had a great quarterfinal match in which he won by disqualification. His opponent went for a desperation heel hook, which is illegal under the rule set in Masters 1 at the brown belt level. At the adult level, it's legal, but at the Masters level, it's not legal. But it's like not one of those where you're like, oh, like you won because he was winning 8-0 and there was like 30 seconds left. Like the dude threw a Hail Mary. Sometimes I wonder, I don't think this guy did it, but sometimes I think people do that to like save face.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like they're out there getting crushed, and like Mike was like working. He was doing a great job. He was listening to myself, and Scott Rendos was cornering him as well. He's listened to us very well, hitting the techniques he needed to hit. He looked great. And like, you know, like I feel like when some people are getting outclassed, they're like, oh, if I like do this, I can like blame it on the DQ.
Exactly.
You know, so that's kind of unfortunate, but that's how that went down. He ended up losing his semifinal match, which means he places bronze. Anybody who loses in the semifinals gets a bronze medal.
Right.
Yeah, so great tournament by Mike. He then went and entered the open class, in which I believe he lost in the round of 16. But, you know, to qualify for the open class, you have to medal. So everybody in that class is also a world medalist.
Yeah.
So it's something to note. Then we have our own Jess Elizabeth, world finalist. Her first IBJJF as a purple belt, entering purple belt Masters 1 middleweight. Jess has, I like to think, like a pretty unique story. So Jess is a Pan Am blue belt adult world medalist, in which she defaulted into her adult medal. In the craziest of circumstances, her first opponent no-showed, and then she would have the winner of a certain match. Both of them no-showed, right? So she defaulted into the semis, in which she lost. So she achieved a bronze medal at the Pan Ams at blue belt. This was a full season ago. This was 2022. And, you know, that wore on her because, like, you know, she has the achievement of being a Pan Am medalist, but she felt like she didn't earn it.
Right.
And which I tried to tell her that she earned it. Like, you know what I mean? You're there, you showed up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you were prepared to compete, and they stole that from you.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
They stole that from you. And things like that. But I get it. You know,
Yes.
it's kind of a bummer. So she shows up. Here we are, purple belt No Gi Worlds. She's in the quarterfinals. It's an eight woman bracket. And her opponent no-shows. So she defaults into a medal again. And she is, I can see it just wearing all over her. She's just like, man, like, you know, not again, you know? And then she goes into a match with a true number 1 seed. So what I mean by that is this person competes heavily and wins heavily. So the person that she had for her semifinal match, I do not recall the woman's name, but I obviously did some homework on her, and she won gold at the Pan Ams, and she won gold in the open class. So she was Pan Am double gold at Purple Belt Masters 1. And Jess, you know, it was 4-4. Tough, tightly contested match against this clearly proven she was ranked number 2 in the world regardless of weight class.
Yeah.
Right? Like overall.
Right.
Ranked number 1 in the weight, ranked number 2 regardless of weight class. And Jess beat her. 4-4, got the judge's decision, which was absolutely the right call because the judge did miss an advantage on a near pass that Jess had. And Jess, honestly, that one's on her. She should have got that pass. But she let her hips ride too high and allowed the girl to retain a guard prior to the pass. But Jess definitely deserved that judge's decision, in which she went into the world finals, no longer a default medalist. Right there, you beat the number 1 girl in your weight class, you beat the Pan Am double gold, and you beat the number 2 girl in Purple Belt Masters 1, regardless of weight, right? So no default there. That completely erases anything negative that you might have to say about how you got there, because you proved you earned it. In her final, she had a tough match against Shauna Bannon. Yeah, I'm going to say it's Bannon. UFC fighter. So, yeah, very aggressive. But, you know, Jess hung tooth and nail. Ended up dropping that one. But what a great experience for her. And we are very proud of her. And that is not a default medal, even though I don't consider your blue belt one either. I know you do, but you certainly shouldn't consider this any other way than you being a dog. Now, on to one of my very old friends, Scott Rendos from React BJJ. Dude, this is my boy, right? So me and Scott, we're very tight. So Scott, I've coached him at a few tournaments. We have very, very similar styles. I've known Scott since I started jiu-jitsu with Warren in 2010. He would come down with Lance and things like that, and we were really great training partners, and I love training with Scott, even though we don't get to train nearly as much together as we should. But Scott, I got to coach him throughout last year's Worlds, in which he made the World Finals and was a World Silver Medalist. This year, repeat run, just dominant on his way to the finals, showing such a versatile game. Takedowns, both upper body, lower body, like meaning snaps, like leg attacks, all that stuff. Guard passing. So one of the biggest improvements. So Scott always had good pressure passing, as you would imagine. He's a very strong wrestler, 2-time state champ, D1 wrestler. So a very strong wrestler.
Yeah.
So he's always had great pressure passing. His loose passing looked phenomenal, right? And submission attempts, holding his dominant positions, transitioning from dominant position to dominant position. He just looked on fire. In his finals, ran into a fire hydrant in a back and forth 0-0 match. Referee's decision went to the other opponent. In a very close match that, I couldn't argue with the decision. Could have gone either way. Scott then went and did the absolute, right? Scott's not big. It's not a big guy, right? He is pretty medium. Okay? Yeah, Scott's pretty medium. But he does the open weight. He won the open weight at the Pans, weight and open weight. But here at the Worlds, he won his quarterfinal match. He might have had a round of 16 match that he won too. I might be forgetting. And then he dropped his semifinal match. It was a close match, very competitive match. But he dropped it, so he ends up with a bronze medal there. So he was Pittsburgh's only double medalist. Only won 2 medals in both weight and open class. So congrats to Scott. I wouldn't mind seeing that be your last tournament as a brown belt, my man. But we've talked about that. And now on to my golden child, Christian Schaefer. Christian went 4-1 on the day, world bronze medalist in a very deep adult blue belt division. Not only just a deep division, but his lone loss came to somebody who I believe is the best blue belt in the world. This kid's name's Frederick Green. He's from the state of Washington. Not 100% sure where he's at right now. But he was a Division I wrestler, wrestled at Boise State, ended up transferring to a Division II school, won a Division II NCAA title at 165 pounds in 2021. The kid's passing. I was watching him all day because I was scouting him. Christian lost to him last year in the quarterfinals as well. So I'm scouting him all day, and all day I'm like, dude, I need to start doing what this kid does. I'm gonna steal this dude's moves. He looked great. Christian fought him tooth and nail to the bitter end. Christian's young, kind of an immature body, still got to fill out and stuff. But his jiu-jitsu, this is not the best rule set for Christian either. It takes away his best tool, which is his leg locks. But that's no excuse, as Christian would not use that as an excuse. And anytime someone brought it up, he would dismiss it because, you know what? No one was allowed the leg locks in that division, although it would give him the most of an advantage. But yeah, he went 4-1. Good tournament. He's fighting some ailments in that tournament, which no one would know if I didn't say that, because he would keep that to himself as well, and finishes his journey as a blue belt world bronze medalist. And that's Pittsburgh BJJ. Quick shout out to Pittsburgh Jiu-Jitsu friend, Renee Souza, who also had a great tournament in his world black belt debut, winning his first match by inside heel hook, and then losing a closely contested 2-2 match against the number 1 seed in the quarterfinals, falling out just one match away from medaling, but a great performance, and one that I'm sure he's definitely going to build on. So that was No Gi Worlds from Pittsburgh's perspective. And, we had a good time there. I enjoyed it being in Vegas. One thing that I would like to see change, and what I like when it's in like California and Texas, places that they've had it in the past, they've had it in better arenas. Where in Vegas, it was at a convention center, so they had these seats built in, but when you're in the bleachers, you can't really even see the mats. It's as I discussed on the ADCC episode, it was hard to see, and I wanted them to put it into a little bit more of an arena, so because it's becoming a spectator event.
Right, exactly.
And the IBJJF Worlds typically is in an arena such as that, something that like a college basketball style arena, where there's seating that
there's
goes
vertical
up.
seating you can see in.
Yeah, and it keeps people off the floor.
Right.
right? So like I really like that. But there are a lot of pros to it being in Las Vegas, as there being tons of accommodations to stay very close to the arena, and flights were not expensive.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. And, Vegas can be fun for small spurts.
Dude, there were an awful lot of Pittsburgh Jiu-Jitsu people you just discussed there.
Yeah, I mean, we
That's
had
pretty
1,
impressive.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We had 12, and, this was one of our down years. We had a lot of our heavy hitters who typically compete, myself, dealing with an injury. Logan, who would have competed, but at the black belt adult division, you need to qualify with a certain amount of points. He fell slightly short of qualifying, taking a silver in Nashville when he needed a gold in order to achieve the points to qualify. Dempsey and Isaac are typically there. Lance Thompson, the head instructor of React Martial Arts. I don't know if it's React.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just had a surgery which held him out. Vince also took this one off. And Warren. I'm sure a handful next year. Assuming things align, I'm sure we'll bring back a deeper squad. And with Pittsburgh Jiu-Jitsu growing, I'm sure more people are going to want to attend.
For sure.
Yeah. Right on.
That was a great recap.
Great recap. So there goes our current events. We covered the UFC Fight Pass Invitational, which was a travesty. And then on to better things, such as the One Championships, Luke the Chef versus Super Joe.
Smoking Joe.
Smoking Joe fight. And touched a little bit on the UFC card, as well as the Pittsburgh Jiu-Jitsu scene at the IBJJF No Gi World Championships. So that's us for today, and we'll see you guys next time.